Welcome to eCHO episode 126 and 123. eCHO is the eBPF and Cilium live show or office hours. And today we are celebrating the release of Cilium 115. It's a part 2. We had a part 1 last week where Duffy was there with Joe Stringer and Ryan to talk about some of the features in Cilium 115. Duffy went through how to deploy Cilium 115 in the Kernel cluster. Ryan talked about one of the major features of Cilium 115, which is the fact we can scale, we're doubling the scale for cluster mesh, and we've gone for 256 to 511 meshed clusters. So before I bring my guests in, and first I welcome everybody who's watching live. If you would like to let us know in your comments where you're watching this from. Again, welcome everybody. So Cilium 115 came out, and so we have here we go. And we've got some guests in today. So Yanis, and we'll start with Yanis and Christos. And actually, before we start with our feature, I just wanted to highlight this blog post that came out yesterday, which is the Cilium 115 blog post on isothermal.com. Again, we walk through all the major features. There've been over 2,700 commits in Cilium 115 across service mesh, gateway API, lots of BGP features we're going to talk about later today, and lots of observability features, some infrastructure as code feature we're going to look with Joseph in a moment. Lots of exciting things. Again, a big thank you to the whole community of developers and contributors who helped with Cilium 115. But first, we're going to talk about a new feature called Hubble Redact. So, got a couple of guests. If you could unmute yourself, and actually, you've got some slides, so I will let you share your slides, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, Nico. Thanks for having us and giving us the chance to talk about this feature that we contributed to the Cilium project. It was a really nice experience for us. Both me and Christos worked on it together. So let me present my screen and briefly talk about what we worked on and why it is important. So, as you already mentioned, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the feature is named Hubble Redact. So we did an extension to Hubble, and this feature is about protecting sensitive data when Hubble monitors layer 7 flows. So let's briefly introduce us. Let me pass it to Chris so he can present himself.
Hey, hello. So yeah, my name is Christos. I'm a software engineer at Elastic, specifically working on observability and OpenTelemetry. And yeah, where I am a contributor and an approver of some specific areas of the project.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Yannis Androulitakis. I'm working as a site reliability engineer at Booking.com in Amsterdam. And my interests lie mostly in operating systems, monitoring, observability, and obviously Kubernetes and cloud-native tools around it. Yes, so let's go into the actual problem that we try to solve. Hubble gives users is a great tool that gives users the possibility to monitor service and operations, and it operates both at the lower level, like layer 4 of the network, or layer 7. The issue that we tackled is that Hubble was unable, before our contribution, to handle sensitive values that were tracked in layer 7 flows. So when the Hubble flow is ongoing, users were able to see sensitive values like API keys or passwords. And this affected both the HTTP protocol and the Kafka protocol. So it touched different areas of the layer 7 flows. And obviously logging or storing like long-term or short-term sensitive values like usernames, passwords, tokens in plain text raises security concerns, reduces the reliability of a product or a software, and in the long run negatively affects business. So it was quite important to solve this issue, and also it was a good entry level, let's say, issue for us to dive into the Cilium project, which is something that we wanted.
Okay, can I ask you, like, what was your personal motivations? Like, was it at work that you came across this requirement to redact data, or was it just some need you had in it was just an opportunity to contribute to the Cilium project?
To be honest, it was mostly sort of a personal project or side thing to work. So it was like we were looking for a chance to dive into the project, test it, and get hands-on experience with it, and maybe explore its options to maybe use it in production at some point. So yeah, it was kind of a combination. I would lean towards personal contribution at this point.
That's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Carry on.
So that's enough with the motivation. About structuring the whole effort in GitHub, we mostly based our work in an issue that Robin has actually opened on GitHub in early 2023. And as you can see, we worked on that and we broke down this parent issue into individual sub-issues, because this way it was better to split the work between me and Chris, and also have Robin have the overall overview of the whole progress. So as you can see, the original issue was converted into 4 individual issues. 3 of them were about HTTP. The one was about removing query parameters from URLs. The other one was about HTTP headers. And the other one was about user information, username and passwords present in URLs. And the 4th one was about Kafka, which was about API keys. So I took the latter 2, and Chris took the former. So this is how we split the whole work to be done. And a quick note on the implementation side, we had to touch various areas of the stack. We mostly worked with a Hubble parser, which we extended and added business logic there, so that it can perform the actual hiding or reduction of sensitive values. We also had to extend the Cilium configuration, obviously, and also the Cilium CLI and Helm templates, because this is why we could expose this functionality to users and let them take advantage of it. And finally, we also had to extend existing test suites to make sure that the code is properly tested, and documentation, obviously, because this is how users onboard, right? And on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see an example of this configuration, how it looks like. So you have Hubble at the root level. Then you have a whole category, let's say, of settings under Redact. And then you have a global, let's say, flag to enable it. By default, this option is still disabled to preserve existing functionality. But in the near future, we're considering changing the default value of it. And below Redact, you can see individual settings under HTTP and Kafka. So these are the supported options right now for Hubble to Redact. In the future, we might need to extend this even further. And with this, yeah, go on.
Do you specify the fields you want to hide? Is that, or do you specify? Yeah, okay.
So if you enable the user info part and the URL query part, you simply hide like everything. But for headers, you need to explicitly provide a whitelist of things you want to allow. The rest is disabled. So everything that is disabled Hubble Redact.
Okay. Otherwise, it's so you have to provide the key of the
Yes.
of the header key value pair.
Yeah. This is actually the name of the header, let's say. And then for Kafka, it's another global setting that hides the API key because it's a single thing. So yeah, it was quite challenging to deal with the headers, but I think Chris did a great job there. So it's kind of it's most of his contribution on that part.
Amazing.
Yes, and with this I can pass it to Chris. He has recorded a 5-minute demo of this work. So let me stop sharing.
Hello again. Let me share my screen as well. Can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, the demo is recorded, but I will cover it with my voice live on top of it. So let me start this one. So yeah, I already have a kind cluster running locally. I have a cluster with 3 worker nodes and 1 master node. And I have already deployed the famous Star Wars demo of the Cilium project. So you can see that I have already Death Star, TIE Fighter, and X-Wing running on the cluster. And I also have deployed a network policy already for layer 7, which will be used to restrict the access or allow the access on between the pods. So I will now install Cilium on the cluster and using the Cilium CLI, and I'm using a release candidate of the latest version, version 1.15, and I explicitly enable Hubble and Relay server, and yeah, I explicitly also disable the Redact feature. By default is disabled, but yeah,
Just to show. Yeah.
So yeah, enabling Cilium here. I will wait for the pods to become alive. Yeah, everything is running. So now Cilium should be healthy, and I will expose the port of Hubble Relay on my local network so as to have access to it. And then I will start observing the flows using specific filters. In this example, I'm only choosing to observe flows that are related to Death Star pod and also the HTTP protocol, and I only filter on layer 7 flows. And yeah, I'm observing, and now I will try to execute a curl command from TIE Fighter pod to against the Death Star service, and I also add some URL query parameters on the URL, and then I also have some extra headers. Most of them are quite random. For example, I have here authorization 1, which we can consider as something that can be sensitive one. So yeah, let's see what will happen. I will send the request, and then we have the flow being observed. We can see that on the flow, we have within the URL, the query parameters plain text there. And in addition, the authorization header is also plain text there, which is something that we would like to fix, would like to hide them from the logs that we see here. So let me stop Cilium and start it again. Now explicitly enabling the Redact feature with the proper settings. So here, so here I will enable the URL query setting, and also I will enable the HTTP header setting, defining a deny list with some specific headers there, which means that these headers, when found, their values will be redacted, will be hidden. So let's start Cilium again.
Is there, so you're not able to zoom in, are you, anymore? Just because I know the questions came in.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I cannot because it's a video.
The video, Apologies.
But
can you double click on your screen? Maybe Mac can self I'm not sure if you're running on Mac.
No, it's a
Okay.
Linux machine. But we can cover the questions later if there are any. Sorry for this. Yeah, so installing Cilium again, forwarding the port, and then observing again. And I will execute the same curl command, and let's see what will happen. The query parameters are the same. It's exactly the same command, the same request. So yeah, let's see. Okay, it's done, and let's see the flow. We can see first of all that the URL query, the query parameters are removed completely. And if we go to the header section, we will see that the authorization header, its value is replaced with a constant, so it's actually hidden. And yeah, so that's all more or less from the feature.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank
Just
you.
works as you wanted to work. How did you find the contribution to Cilium as a project, and like as a, assuming this was your first contribution, did you find the process clear enough? I know you talked about how Yanis, about how you have to do the test suite, the the parsers, the CLI, and the docs. I guess, what was your experience?
Okay.
And any advice for any kind of anyone who wants to contribute to Cilium?
Okay. To be honest, I found it a great learning experience, and it was quite smooth to onboard because everyone in the Cilium community that we got in touch with or had to interact with were kind and responsive. So we did some design and talk with different people, I suppose from different departments. So there was support from the community, which was good. There was enough documentation to set up your development machine, let's say.
Yeah.
So these two were important factors that made it easy to and fun to work with Cilium. So yeah, and even for a small feature, since Cilium has quite a big stack, you need to touch different things, right? You need to touch documentation, you need to touch tests, maybe you need to touch different components of Cilium and see how they interact. And what I also found like useful is that it was very easy to build and deploy locally, which is not the case with many projects. Like this whole make file thing, like make kind or deploy everything locally, is not always easy. So the edit, compile, run, it was really good for me.
Excellent. Okay, very good to know. Great feedback to for the community. And Christos?
I can second the make file part. I really like that. It's quite easy, simple, and straightforward, and everything works. So yeah, it was also a great experience for me as well. I found that the project was very well organized, and the tooling was there to bring your own development environment. Yeah, really easily. And was super nice. We even had to, regarding the contribution and the collaboration within the let's say this effort, the community was quite nice for me as well. And we even had to revert some PRs and improve some things there, and then go through the review process again and merge them again. And that was between a feature freeze, I think. So the reaction there from the maintainers was really nice. We had some short chats and everything was sorted out, which was really nice for us. And actually, it was super nice because in the end, the feature was really robust. And yeah, as Yanis mentioned, specifically for HTTP headers, we had to redesign it a bit to organize this better and provide more flexibility to the users. So yeah, that was great.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I would like to thank you both for joining. Really appreciate it. And I know I think you're at FOSDEM, so I don't want to take too much of your time. Again, I'm really grateful for the two of you for having joined. And I will let you go. And
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And we'll move to our next feature, our new guest. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of features, and actually, let me just go back to this before I start presenting again. So we've got Cilium 115. So we have a section on Hubble Redact if you want to read more about it and access to the docs. We've also added a few videos from Dean, who will hopefully join us in a little bit. If there are any features amongst this huge list of features that you would like to see, let us know. We've got a number of things. We're going to be covering now more infrastructure as code. So for this, I'm bringing my next guest in. Joseph.
Hello. How are
How are you
you?
doing?
I'm fine. And you?
Yeah, I am very well. I'm very well. I know we've talked a lot in on Slack, and I know you are a regular watcher, listener of the show.
I try.
So I guess before we talk about Terraform, I guess you've been using Cilium as introduce yourself first, and then we'll talk about how.
I'm a cloud engineer. I work for Accenture. It's a big company.
Yeah, we all know Accenture.
I'm specialist on Terraform, AWS, and Kubernetes. It's
very good.
It's my specialist. I love that.
Yeah. And how long have you been using Cilium? And are you using Cilium like professionally, or is it like in a home lab? What's your?
I use Cilium for clients, for customer, and for fun to test on Kubernetes. It's very interesting to test eBPF and Cilium.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, Terraform. I mean, I'm a big fan of Terraform. I worked at HashiCorp for this.
You're from HashiCorp.
Yes,
You were.
exactly. So I was at HashiCorp for a little while. I love automation, infrastructure as code. But I guess, and I was almost surprised that until recently, like there wasn't a Terraform provider for Cilium. And I'm guessing, I guess it's maybe most people use maybe Helm or to deploy Cilium. I don't know what's your experience.
Yes, I used mainly Helm to deploy the Cilium, and in fact, I would like to test cluster mesh, and it's not possible to deploy Cilium easily with cluster mesh. So to deploy, you have to use Cilium CLI. So, but it's not a Terraform, so it's not. It's command line, but I prefer GitHub's movement. So Terraform,
Sure.
it's interesting for that.
Right, 100%. Cool. So the process to so you started your own building your own provider from scratch for Cilium, and I guess how did you find the process to create your own provider from?
I never create a provider before Cilium, Terraform provider Cilium, so it's difficult. In addition, I'm not an expert in Go language. I learned Go language in Udemy learning. I never do a big project in Go language, so it's my first my first project, my first serious project in Go language. So
well, I think you've done an amazing job. Would you like to share?
Yes, I can share my screen. You see my screen?
Yeah, here we go.
Recursivity.
That's so. And actually, before you start, you actually have some. The background for everybody is Joseph has created the Terraform provider for Cilium, published on the registry, works with OpenTofu, works with normal Terraform, and you also have some on GitHub some repos with some sample codes, right?
Exactly. So it's a very simple code. You have two files. You have two Terraform files. So the first is the versions to say what you need to install. So kind provider and a Cilium provider. It's for that. And the other one is a main. It's a main, as I said. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's you install a kind cluster and a Cilium resources. So for the test, I propose to increase the version. we like the risk.
Wow. So I guess you have to. Yeah, we assume that Helm is well. Okay,
we can change. We can have two replicas for operator.
Okay, let's do this live. Yeah, no, let's go for it.
So you have to Terraform init.
Yeah, so that's when you kind of download providers like locally,
exactly.
Right?
It's in the. You can see all the provider.
There we go.
And after that, apply.
All right, straight. I always do a Terraform plan because I'm kind of safe. But
you need a plan before apply.
yeah, I always want to plan before I apply. I know the apply has a plan, but I'm cool. So you can see that. So what you're doing is you're creating a kind cluster.
Yes. Kind cluster, and after that you install Cilium.
Got it. So and the kind cluster has no CNI by default, so we'll put Cilium on top of it, and it's a 2-node.
You see that you can add also, for example, a kuproxy free. It's a disable kuproxy. I don't know exactly the option.
Oh yes,
if you want. So apply. So for the moment, it's just we can see here. Maybe we can increase. So
right.
It's again.
So it's creating, but I mean that always takes a couple of minutes.
It's normal.
Okay. While we wait for this to happen, there's a good question here from Asad Duzaman. Apologies if I've mispronounced. Joseph, I know you've been using Cilium on AWS. I actually seen some of your Terraform modules.
Yes.
What's your experience around using Cilium on AWS?
Oh, it's yes. I created a blog about EKS and Cilium. It's very interesting to replace ENI VPC AWS CNI using ENI address. You have a lot of options. So I finished my, my demo. It's difficult for me to speak in English and
yeah, I don't know worries. But I think I will we'll share your blog post, and there are a couple of a few different models on how you deploy.
It's a French blog post.
Unfortunately
for a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
but yeah, it's an interesting use case. It's a very common use case is to deploy Cilium on eCHO. You can chain your CNI Cilium to the existing CNI, or can remove the existing CNI and deploy Cilium in what we call ENI mode. So Cilium status is okay. So you've been able to deploy your Kernel clusters. That took a minute, and then 40 seconds later, it took another to deploy Cilium. And we have two operators? Yeah, we got version 115. Yes. Amazing. And is it idempotent? So if you say change your Terraform file and run Terraform apply and say add another operator, will it add another operator? Are we confident enough?
Sorry.
See, if you say operator 3.
Oh, 3. It's possible to
maybe 2, maybe 1. If you go down to 1 operator, yeah.
I never see.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't have to say that maybe.
So I change this operator option to 1, from 2 to 1. So apply. You see the change.
Perfect. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Double check. 1 operator. Live demo, well done. This is great.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. And I know you showed me, and I've also tested, but it works with OpenTofu, right?
Yes. I don't install OpenTofu for the demo, but it works. It's also work. Yes.
Fantastic. Cool. Awesome. I know we won't have the time to cover this today, but you actually also created a provider for Pulumi.
Yeah. I can stop the screen.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Yeah. No. So, and that's just again, we just wanted to mention. I think that's pretty interesting. Yes. Just to.
Yes. It's. I never use Pulumi before. Before that. So I use. There are a lot of tools to transform Terraform provider into a Pulumi provider. So I use this for that.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I will. This is I was just. This is just my short demo that is in the 115
Okay,
blog post. Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much, Joseph. That's
Thank you to
brilliant. Yeah, great contribution, amazing contribution to the Cilium project with Terraform and Ptolemy support. I've got a couple of other guests I'm going to bring in. Joseph, again, thank you very much, and see you very soon.
See you.
Okay, I've got some ISO finance folks to join me. I thought I would just bring the whole crew because, you know, why not? So first, Michael, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. It's my first time on eCHO, so yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, first of many, I'm sure. Welcome. And Dean.
Hi, yeah, so same for me as well. I guess for me and Michael, it's our first time on eCHO for the pair of us, which is kind of really great to get involved.
Yeah, welcome. Great to have you on. So, Dean, you have also contributed an awful lot to that 115 blog post, and we'll have you do some demos, or maybe talk us through the demos. Michael, sorry, Dean.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, so I'm just spinning up a lab in the background. So I'm actually using one of our iSurveillance hands-on labs to actually show you some of these features. So you can go and use them today as well, which is great. And then, yeah, I'll take you through some live show and tell of some things we covered in the blog post.
Cool. And Michael, you've got your title is Cilium Product Manager, which I think is you're the only one in the world.
Yeah, and after I quit, it's going to be no one's going to be able to use it.
Yeah,
they're going to retire the title. Yeah, but no, that's true. Yeah, so I've joined fairly recently, although I've been trying to join iSurveillance for quite a long time, but I've only managed to do it less than a year ago successfully, and somehow, product manager was one of the roles that was offered to me, and I thought that would be interesting, accepted it, and so far it's been I've been living the dream. It's like the most amazing role that ever existed. It's almost like it was created specifically for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know it is fantastic to have you. I kind of knew of you because and I'm going to put you on the spot, but I've been using some of your content. Sorry, I will just share my screen again. So whenever you Google things around Kubernetes, you end up on something called tkng.io, which is a Kubernetes networking guide. I'm sure many of you have ended up on this page at some stage in your networking, Kubernetes career, and it's your little baby.
Yeah. It's kind of it's funny how it started because it started, I think it was around 2020 or 2021 when I was still active on Twitter, and I got into a discussion with some of the networking heavyweights on Twitter where they were basically slagging off Kubernetes and saying, it's just a bunch of net on net with a bunch of IP tables rules. So basically trying to downplay some of the things that I found elegant and interesting. And I kind of responded in this kind of Twitter style rage with like 20 tweets in a thread. And then one of them said, well, it would be nice if you documented all of these thoughts in a blog post. And then I thought, blog post it is. And then I started writing a blog post, and then I realized it was getting too long. And then I decided to split it into multiple blog posts. And eventually I thought, it's no longer a blog post. Let's do it a separate website. So that's the little story behind this website.
Oh, okay. Well, no, this is great. It has been super helpful for many of us. Cool. So in Cilium 115, we have a ton of feature, which I will. I was going to do a bit of BGP because we've got you, Michael. Dean is still getting his demo ready, so I will start with the. Well, we got a few BGP features. Let's walk them through first. So we've got. Well, I'm going to demo the MD5 and the community. We also have a feature for multiple IPAM. Michael, what do you make of this?
Yeah, not to confuse with multiple IPAM. It's multi-pool IPAM. Yeah, it's one of the recent additions to Cilium. I think it was added in the previous release. It's the mode that allows you to allocate pod IPs from more than one CIDR range. So whereas before you would have to essentially at a bootstrap time have to decide what CIDR you're going to use for pods in your cluster, and then after that it's pretty much set in stone. It's very difficult to change or expand it later on. With multi-pool IPAM, we added the ability to configure multiple CIDR ranges and then use them selectively for different pods. And when we released this feature in the previous release, it came out very limited. So it had basic functionality working, but let's say it worked in a direct routing mode, but it assumed that you had to use what we call it auto direct node route or something along those lines. So when you essentially force all nodes to sit in the same layer 2 segment and then create static routes between them. So that's obviously is useful in and of itself. Pretty much most of the people who build on-prem data centers these days, they deploy eBPF as a fabric. So simulating one big layer 2 domain is fairly easy, and it would work for a lot of scenarios. But still, we lack the support for BGP advertisement, and this is what this feature adds. And this is probably worth highlighting that it's an external contribution, and it's a pretty kind of very well scoped change, but at the same time, it's very, very useful. It's a big step towards the maturity of the multiple IPAM. So now we can signal our BGP control plane whenever a new port CIDR or whenever a new CIDR range gets allocated to a particular node, and then BGP agent sitting on that node will start advertising that range into the to its peers, but most likely it's the underlying network. So now you're no longer limited, so you don't have that requirement to have a single layer 2 domain. So you can build literally like every node can sit in its own layer 3 segment, and as long as BGP is there, we should be able to have full reachability between all the pods.
Very good, very cool. So like you said, it's Daniel from Solo who contributed this feature. So again, thank you very much for that. There's a lot of BGP stuff. We've added some BGP tooling as well, and it's kind of once you, as a Cisco iOS CLI user, I'm used to my kind of show IP BGP summary or whatever commands. It's kind of critical we have this in Cilium, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of BGP implementations, like Kubernetes native BGP plugins, for a very long time they kind of assumed that you don't need operational visibility. Like MetaLB, which we all know, that's one of the first, I think the first BGP implementation, or maybe KubeRouter was the first, I don't know. So MetaLB was out, they had literally zero visibility. So it either works or it doesn't. And then how you troubleshoot it, you usually have to go to your underlay top of the rack switch and then start figuring out from the logs what's going on. So yeah, and I think we're gradually getting to a point where we understand that it is important to have the same level of operational visibility on the Kubernetes side that we have on the physical network side. And this is probably the most critical step. Like what have I configured? What is the current state? How many prefixes I advertise? and what's the status of the peering session.
And actually, I should show some of this. So for this, I'm going to be using one of our labs. Can you see my screen well enough?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to exec into one of the Cilium nodes. One it is here. So I think what's interesting as well, and before that, we'll talk about the MD5 in a sec here, is on the Cilium CLI, we can run this command, or you can run it directly from the Cilium agent. And in the docs, what we've done is we've actually changed the command from just Cilium to Cilium-dbg, and that's just a way to. I think people were often confused, and I was, when you first using Cilium CLI, and you look at the docs, and some commands you run them from inside the shell of the Cilium agent, and some commands you run it from the Cilium CLI, right? So by renaming it in the docs, it just helps you to, just to make sure that people don't make the mistake.
So actually, this is one of my favorite updates of the 1.15 release, is that Cilium-dbg, because the amount of times I go into the Cilium documentation and it says, run this Cilium command. And I'm like, I'm running it and it's not like it doesn't work. Is it the version of the CLI I've got downloaded? I'm like, oh no, I probably need to be connected to the agent pod and it's there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to documentation that's easier to follow from that point of view going forward.
For sure.
Yeah, my biggest regret is that the Cilium CLI wasn't renamed to Cilium Cattle or Cilium CTL.
Oh yeah,
that would have been my preferred choice.
Well, you never know. 1.16.
Yeah,
you should ask the product managers to prioritize this feature.
Oh yeah, that's there have been so many discussions about it already that I don't think that one person can change anything. It's like the consensus has been reached. So
yeah. Right. So I think what's interesting in here is you can actually see the routes that are. So if I do show IP BGP routes, let's do advertised. Let's have a look. So this essentially, again, it's just if you use BGP before, or if you use Cisco IOS before, it should feel quite familiar. This helps you understanding what you are advertising to the top of rack device or the underlying network. It just shows that with my peers, I am sending my peer this prefix, which happens to be the pod CIDR, and you can see some of the attributes that are being used as well. Now, there's one thing, we build our BGP session with our top of rack and we advertise stuff, but Michael, we don't do anything, right, with the routes we receive from our peers.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It was a conscious design decision in the beginning because we don't really need to learn much. Like you can get by with just a static default pointing out your Ethernet 0 or whatever the default interface that you have.
Yeah.
But it's very likely that in the future we will introduce the ability to learn new prefixes and allow a BGP daemon to kind of talk to the kernel and install the routes in the table, in the routing table.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. So we've got this new lab. Well, it's an existing lab has been updated to Cilium 1.15. I think the lab is still using 1.15.0, rediscounted at 1. And one of the BGP features we've added is support for MD5 base authentication, which is like kind kind of a must have, really. So I'm very glad we've added it. And it's pretty simple and pretty quite like the way it's been implemented. So MD5-based authentication is essentially a way to say you and your peer will set up a password. I'll be the same, ideally. And then when you send a BGP packet, you will use an option in the TCP header to hash using that password. You hash some information like the source IP, destination IP, and you send that hash and you add that hash to the packet, and you'll send it across to your peer, and the peer will look at that hash, compare with their own hash, and then if the hashes don't match, then the packet will be dropped. And it's really just to improve security and prevent spoofing. So what we've done here is just we created a Kubernetes secret, which is based on a password called my secret password. And then in our peering policy, what we're adding is we're just referring to that Kubernetes secret in our configuration. I'm just going to deploy it. But what happens now is, my BGP session will go down, right? It's going to active because, again, I've not done the other side of my peering session. So I'm going to go onto the other side of my peering session, which is a FRR routing device. And we're just going to run this quick command. Essentially, what we're doing is we add in this password to my peer. So to say, my Cilium peering relationship with Cilium is based and authenticated using that password. And whoops. And sorry, I should show this again. And now the BGP is back up, and so the session has been authenticated. And one way to verify is actually to run to look at the packet. So we're going to go back onto the Cilium agent, and we're going to install TCP dump and capture the traffic, just to show again very briefly that the packets are being hashed. So I'm running a TCP dump of TCP port 179. I'm saving into that file. That should be enough. And I'm just going to look at it now. And I'm going to go into the TCP. And this is quite geeky when you look into the packets, but you can see the TCP MD5 signature here. And if you open up that window here, you can see that the digest. So we've essentially added this to our packet, and that's for the remote side to get to compare and to accept or to drop if depending on the result of the hash. So I know it's kind of for some of the networking people, this might be basic, but it's a very essential feature. Cool.
And that also is an external contribution, by the way. So
it is, yes.
Kudos to our community.
Yes, indeed. Awesome. Right, I had another networking feature which I'm going to let you something called Ingress network policy. So who wants to talk about this one? I will share my screen again.
So I don't think we have a demo for this feature in particular. And it was actually Michael who pointed it out to me when we were going through the list of the 1.15 features. So previously, one of the great things that everyone uses Cilium for is obviously the network policies and the enhancements we have on network policies over what's available in Kubernetes out of the box. But there was a slight behavior mismatch in the sense of the expectation of what the system does at a software level versus what the expectation is from a human end user when they're configuring policies. So with the growing list of Ingress features from Cilium, we're seeing more people starting to implement the Ingress features, especially now with the Gateway API. One of the things that was noticed and queried was the behavior of network policies for Ingress traffic. So by design, Ingress traffic would bypass the cluster-wide network rules. And it was Michael who helped explain to me that at a technical level, it's essentially because the original TCP connection, the source address, the IP address of where that Ingress traffic is coming from, is replaced inside of Cilium because of how it goes through the Ingress components. This then obviously meant that if you set a network policy in place to say from this external network, do not allow this traffic, it would be missed as part of that policy because it's essentially that traffic doesn't originate from there anymore, the data path. Of course, we have seen users request that this data path be updated so that we can have an Ingress policy, and that's now in place. So I think it's kind of really, when I was writing the blog post, like, where do I sit this exactly? Does it sit under the CNI level because it's in the data path, or does it sit in the Ingress feature? It's kind of one of the both. But essentially now what it means is that source IP address is maintained inside of the data path, which means Cilium can use it for a cluster-wide network policy. And really, really simply, all the changes were in the back end there in the code. It just means that those existing network policies now will take effect, that you can block traffic. And in the blog post, try to just really show what's happening there, where basically there's traffic coming from an Ingress IP address outside of the Kubernetes cluster. It's denied because the rule example that we give it doesn't match that traffic. And actually what you'll also see is the second line there is that the requester will actually get a 403 because that comes from the Envoy proxy to basically say you are not allowed to access this as well. So that traffic is being terminated by the proxy from that request as well, which again is also something really pertinent when you're thinking about why you're using Ingress and how you handle that traffic and why you're proxying that traffic as well. You want a web response from the Ingress, not just it be maybe black hole as traffic going further. I don't know, Michael, I'm hoping I've given justice there to the feature and everything that went on, but if there's anything I've missed out, please let me know.
No, that's pretty accurate, yeah. And I think a lot of Ingress controllers, they share a similar problem because let's say if you have an Ingress, it's deployed behind a node port, and usually Ingress is, let's say, take Nginx Ingress, right? It's a single deployment, so the pod that sits somewhere in a cluster, and the traffic hits one node before it gets to the Ingress, it needs to be source netted so that the reverse traffic travels back. So a lot of Ingress controllers suffer from it, and a lot of people just take it for granted that, hey, it's not going to work, right? It's Ingress, it's a special case, we'll just take care of it some other way. And this, with Cilium, it's nice because we have Ingress on every node. And so no matter where the traffic hits, we will always see the original source IP, and we'll be able to enforce policies based on this original source IP. So yeah, it's a little change, but it makes a lot of difference to people who don't want to mess around with additional kind of proxy-specific rules to kind of filter out the traffic and just use network policies.
Got it. And does it work with Gateway API?
Yeah, it's a generic change. Yeah, it works with our Ingress and both Gateway API and Ingress. Yeah.
Oh,
because under the hood, it's the same Envoy process that we're provisioning. It's just different northbound representations or APIs.
Okay, got it. Cool. And I think we'll been going on for an hour. I want to have two more features I want to talk about, and I'll finish on Gateway API, which I think is a major feature for this new release, support for Gateway API 1.0. But before we do that, Dean, you worked a lot on the Hubble updates.
Yeah.
Do you want to show us? Do you want us?
Yeah, so I'll show you the last couple to go through, because obviously we've already had some of the contributors to talk about the Hubble Redact features, which were absolutely fantastic in terms of like enhancing Hubble and the ability of it going forward. I think what we'll probably do is come back and do a slightly longer section maybe on the Hubble export feature as well. So that's the ability to export the Hubble flows to a file, and then you can use some other third-party system to visualize and consume those logs elsewhere. That's obviously been a question that's come up from the community quite a lot, to have that ability there. And there's quite a lot of moving parts to that feature as well. It was very hard to write a very succinct part of the blog post to actually cover those ability features. But the last piece that I wanted to cover from an observability point of view was actually just some of the Hubble CLI features, because I spend a lot of time using Hubble CLI to write blog posts, test stuff. Just that ability to actually visualize the traffic and see what's going on is just really, really key for me as well. So if I present, and hopefully this works, because let's see, we share screen.
And before we do it, Dan, unfortunately I have to drop because I have another meeting coming up. But it was always nice chatting to you guys and to all the viewers. And yeah, I'll hope you invite more. I'm happy to attend more. So.
Thanks for joining, and talk to you very soon.
All right, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
So there we go. Right, so I can see that still in the StreamYard view as well. So this is basically this lab is a cloned copy, just because I was doing some development work in the background, but essentially using our Golden Signals lab, which shows you how to use Grafana and with Hubble and so forth as well. The Cilium open source, which is a really great lab. So essentially I've got Hubble up and working. I've got a couple of namespaces running. We've got our very favorite tenant jobs running as well. And I've also got the Hubble UI. So in the background here, we can just see a couple of bits of traffic. So I'm going to start to dive into that a little bit more for everyone as well. So the first change was a little bit more of one of those things where it's a bit of a niggle for me. So it always really used to bug me that if I wanted to look at traffic from a particular pod, I couldn't use -n or -namespace to look at a pod's traffic. I always had to do it this way. So I had to specify the namespace as part of the pod argument. And the reason why that used to annoy me is because it does not work the same as the kubectl command. So it's just like kind of not muscle memory. It obviously works as you expect. The really great thing is that has now been fixed. So now we can specify namespace and we can specify pod, and I can even use the shortened argument of -n here as well. Only a really small thing, but it makes a massive difference. Like I said, it's a little niggle. One of the ones that I find really interesting that's been contributed is the ability to observe all namespaces at once. So really simply, what I can do is I can do Hubble observe. I can actually do -a the same way that you can do the kubectl command, and that'll show me all namespaces. So if I just do Hubble observe by default, it shows me the default namespace. But actually, that's not kind of the best part of the ability to observe all namespaces at once. So we also have the ability to show to all namespaces. So this is where traffic terminates to a particular namespace for a location of the resource you're interested in. So at the minute, I'm going to look at core DNS. And we can also do that the opposite way. So from all namespaces. So I can actually see where traffic originates from a particular pod or service across all namespaces as well. The reason why I'm going to show core DNS is because actually to visualize this traffic and why this works across all namespaces is really important. So here, what I'm going to see is when I say to all namespaces, essentially all we're doing is looking at all traffic that terminates in the kube system namespace where core DNS works. But we can visualize what that means because we can only see DNS queries. So this means we're looking at all traffic coming from any other namespace that terminates against the core DNS pods. That means it's only ever going to be DNS queries that are sent to core DNS. If we look at the opposite of that command, which is from all namespaces, then I'm going to see the opposite. So I'm actually going to see traffic that comes from core DNS going out to any other namespace inside of the environment. So that means I can see all DNS answers. So I can see no other traffic apart from DNS answers from core DNS. So that's a really nice way to visualize the difference between those two arguments. But obviously that's probably not a great example because core DNS only lives inside a single namespace. So what I've done in the background is I've also deployed a sample application just to show you that as well. So again, I've got a pod that's called sample app, but this pod actually lives inside of 2 different namespaces. And actually, we can see here, I've got some traffic going to and forth the sample apps together inside a namespace A to namespace B. But also here as well with namespace A, I can see traffic going out to the cube system and back again. And if I just replay that, because again, there's a loop going on in the background, we'll see that traffic kind of change up. So in Hubble UI,
and you can add some more features, right? You could just say add port 80, or if you wanted to just keep adding more and more filters at all.
Yeah. So in Hubble UI, essentially what I'm saying here is rather than say, show me all traffic from sample app that exists just in test B or just has these labels, I've got a copy essentially of the sample, the same application across multiple namespaces. Maybe we're doing this for testing reasons. The reason why this is kind of interesting is because here in this test B namespace, not only is the sample app talking to sample app internally, it's actually trying to get external to the world, but we can see it's denied by that little red line. And it's also speaking to the Grafana namespace as well. So now, if I
can I ask as well? Sorry, why? How come is there like a Grafana logo on the UI?
So that's actually baked into the Hubble UI product. So you can, again, for anyone that's interested and wants to add their own application in there, we're pulling through a number of known logos in there. So I know we've got Grafana, we've got Kafka, we've got Zookeeper, and there's a number of other kind of logos out the box as well. It is something that probably needs someone to spend a little bit more time and look at and add more logos as more popular applications and things from the CNCF landscape pop up as well. But that is something you can customize yourself. So I have heard of a few users in the outside world looking to add their own, for their internal usage, their own custom app icons as well, investigating that.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, all good. So if we do from all namespaces, and this is going to be the one where it's a little bit hard to catch, I'm only looking at the last 5, but essentially what we should start to see is communication at some point going out to the Grafana namespace as well. But as you can imagine, because I'm trying to capture maybe all flows from the environment, they scroll through quite quickly as well. So I can't quite see that there at the moment. So you're just going to have to trust me on this one. So I'm going to move on for time reasons. As we know, not all demos go perfectly, or the data always looks the same as you expect. So there's 2 last filters. So we can also filter against URL. So HTTP URL. And again, we'd use regex to specify that URL. So here I'm looking for any subdomain lookups to github.com. And we can see a couple going out there where we're trying to get to the API. And again, if maybe there's another service that was going to a GitHub place, but maybe not API, that command will pick that up as well. Nice. And then the final one, which I think is really interesting, so is the HTTP header. So I can filter on all traffic that has particular HTTP headers. So here we're actually looking for gRPC traffic, but that's encapsulated. Now, at the moment here, I'm seeing all of this traffic that's happening from the particular, it's going from the loader to the crawler pod. So that's egress from the loader to ingress of the crawler pod. Now, of course, by default, using the Hubble Observe, I'm only using the compact view here as well. And again, with all of these filters that I've talked about as well, we can also change the output of this as well, which is something that I think users always miss whenever they use Hubble. They can see the traffic, go, wow, it's really great. It's still missing some things I'm interested in. So actually, if I output that to JSON, I can see it's in JSON format here as well. And then I can see things like the headers of this traffic. And if I just pipe that into JQ, then for example, here, I could actually look for any of these headers for this particular traffic as well that I'm interested in, or any of these other fields. So those are kind of some of just the really kind of useful CLI updates to make using Hubble even easier out of the box. So yeah, hopefully that works for people.
Very nice. Thank you. And I would say it's a perfect segue to the last feature, which I was going to go and talk about. You just mentioned how you found some gRPC traffic using Hubble. And we have this new feature in the Gateway API.
Yeah.
Which
so I should have pointed it out on that last one as well. The reason why I was using the header for that is because it's gRCP traffic, but it's been sent over HTTP to initiate that traffic to begin with because of the way the application works. So that's why we're using the HTTP header for it as well. And again, you'll find other applications sometimes do similar things. So yeah, go on, show us the gateway features.
Yeah. And it's actually we've got this new picture which I absolutely love that kind of shows all the different well, not all of them, but lots of the different use cases supported by the Gateway API using Cilium. So you've got Gateway API, new version of Ingress, replacement for Ingress, and a way to route layer 7 traffic into your cluster. So you could say if traffic to that /foo prefix, I will send it to this particular backend, right? You could say to the /bar, I will send it to a different backend, right? So that's kind of basic HTTP routing based on a layer 7 value. You could say, well, I want traffic based, I want traffic to be load balanced. So I want 99% of the traffic to go over to my stable app. And I want to do some canary testing, and therefore 1% will go to secondary app. You could use it to do redirection. So if you have a user trying to access a domain that has been migrated, the Gateway API can send a redirect back to the user using 302. And the last use case we've got on this picture is gRPC, which is, again, that's a brand new in 1.15. So what we've got in the demo is the gRPC-based application and using the Gateway API and gRPC routing. Now, what I learned a fair bit here is I learned about this microservices demo, which is essentially this online catalog demo app, which has like 11 microservices, and they're using gRPC to communicate between each other. And the demo app lets you pick some items. You can add them to a shopping cart. You can, add some details like the shipping address. You can find your mug. You can change a currency. There are also different things that, again, it's using this microservices application, which is here. So you've got lots of different in the environment. We're going to deploy lots of different pods. And we're going to access over gRPC to the product catalog and the currency service, right? So using the Gateway API. One thing we're going to install is something called the proto file, which is essentially some kind of specification you use in gRPC to describe the data, how the data is packaged in gRPC, and how the different, what they call methods, so how you access the data and how to serialize the data. So for example, we're going to access the project catalog, and it's almost like an API call. What are the calls supported? You can list the products in the catalog, you can search the products, get the products. And in what this will return is this list of products. And that will show us a list of products with their description, their price in US dollar. And we're also going to access the currency service, which will return the list of currency codes in response. So that's all what we're going to be doing in this lab, and that's the last 5 minutes of this episode. So first, we go ahead and deploy these microservices. And it takes about a minute or so to deploy this app. And we're going to download this file I was just showing you, which is a proto file. So here we go. That's the one we were just looking at. So when I make a gRPC call, I'll be using that file to access my gRPC service. So first, we're going to look at this, the gRPC route. Again, that's something new in Cilium 115. That's a new gateway API resource supporting in Cilium 115. And it's just like, again, almost like a static route where you say, if I see traffic, gRPC traffic toward that service, proto catalog service, using this method, I will send that traffic to that product catalog service. So if we look at my service, product catalog service, it's listening on 3550, which is the port here. So that's how we define the routing from into our cluster. So let's go ahead and deploy it, and we'll our gateway has an IP address, which is 172.18.255.201. So I'm outside the cluster, and I'm going to make a gRPC call to the address of my gateway, which we're going to save here. So we're using gRP curl, which is like curl for gRPC. And again, we are using the demo proto specification I showed you before. And we're making a call to that hipster shop currency service. And what we get in return is a list of currency code, right? So we've been able to access a resource over gRPC by using the gateway API. And if I do the same for the product catalog, and it's almost the same command, accessing the product catalog service, I get the list of products with currency, with the cost, description, picture, etc. So again, that's a new feature in Cilium 115. Just a nice addition to all the other features we support in the gateway API. And that's, I think, the major thing we wanted to talk about in this episode. Anything else you wanted to add, Dean?
No, it's kind of one of those with, like, as the features go on, you kind of look at some of the features and you think to yourself, like, okay, which feature am I interested in? Did it make that release? Or is there, like, am I heavily invested in Ingress? Like, what's there? And actually, yes or no, the feature might be there that you're looking for, or the fix or whatever. But actually, when you start to unpick and go under the hood, there's just actually so much going on and being added and improved and hardened, and security posture fixed and so forth inside of the Cilium. It's kind of really hard to keep on top of all those things. Like, I remember I sat down with Michael and I went through and I gave Michael the big list that I had. And basically it was to create this image with, like we see in front of us on our screen. And then Michael was like, oh, well, there's all these other things as well, but it depends on what it means to the end user. So, for example, the Ingress network policy, very small change, very technical change in the back end, doesn't actually affect any configuration from an end user point of view, but it does have quite a big lasting impact to those that use service mesh. There was another one that we didn't actually touch on in the blog post, but it was an enhancement to the egress gateway. So an egress gateway, when you're using that, you have to be very pertinent in the configuration file that you use to specify how the routes are defined, because you want to define how that traffic is routed to the egress of your network and through the gateway. that required an extra config flag to do that. Now there's a PR that was accepted that basically the gateway can auto detect that itself using BPF in the background. Again, very technical fix, very, very minor change to the configuration, but it's one of those things that now, as a architectural consideration and a implementation consideration, you no longer just need to think about because it's done for you.
Nice.
And you know, I think this also kind of then goes back to what we're seeing. You know, Cilium is now graduated. It's a very, very mature product. You're going to continue in releases to see further enhancements in the product that maybe are not those big wow moments of features, but are just continuing existing iterations on the features. And again, you know, things like the gateway API piece is kind of one of those things. Like, we've had gateway API now for 1 or 2 versions, and we're continuing to mature that feature. The gateway API is really nice because the gateway API as a whole, as part of the Kubernetes adoption, is also maturing on its own, and we're kind of one of the first offerings to kind of really take all of that on as well. So, you know, hopefully there is something for everyone in this release. But again, you know, go through our blog post, we've got the links to the PRs that helped make these features possible, and you can see what the discussion was about them. So, you know, I'm always saying whenever I see things come up on the Cilium Slack, if you've got an opinion, you've got a comment, you need your consideration to be taken in place, open an issue, get involved with the community hours, be part of the wider community and help contribute to these and push this forward, because this is how all of these things happened. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's looking back at our first guest, they saw an issue they wanted to contribute. They found it, you know, a good entry point, and they had a good experience. So that's great to know. Okay, well, we've been going on for 1 hour and 22 minutes. I want to thank all the guests, including you, Dean, for joining today, and everybody who's been watching. And I will see you all in the next one. I'm going to start working on 116 now. This is once 115 is over, I'll move on to the next one. So see you in this summer for the 116 edition of this. Again, thanks everybody.
Bye everyone.